Hello again and welcome to Spotlight. I'm Algorinov and today we will talk about financial fraud. What makes people believe in financial pyramids? What makes great fraudsters believe they can cheat a whole nation? Recently, the most notorious constructor of financial pyramids was released from prison in Russia after serving 4.5 years. Today, he is the guest in our studio, Sergei Mavrodi.
Sergei Mavrodi, the founder of MMM, a notorious pyramid scheme which left more than 1 million Russians without their life savings, has recently been released from a Moscow detention center. Mavrodi, who is believed to have diverted some $1.5 billion worth of private investments through the scheme, went into custody pending trial in 2003. However, he was formally convicted of fraud only in late April this year. In 1994, MMM reported dividends of 1,000% annually, which according to analysts succeeded largely thanks to a massive advertising campaign with soap-like television commercials telling the story of a man on the street who turns into a millionaire after putting his modest savings into MMM shares. Mavrodi was jailed for tax evasion after the MMM pyramid collapse in 1994, prompting thousands of cheated investors to take to the streets in protest. But he was released the following year to run for parliament. He secured immunity from prosecution by winning a seat in the State Duma, only to lose his mandate a year later. He then went into hiding and the police spent 7 years trying to track him down before his arrest in 2003.
Hello, Mr. Mavrodi, and welcome to our program.
Hello.
Tell us, now that you have been released, does it mean that the state has no more claims against you?
Well, let me clarify this. The sentence will come into force after consideration by the Constitutional Court. Moscow City Courts will consider my case according to constitutional petitions on the 11th of July.
So you're going to appeal?
It's not my appeal. The appeal has been filed by hundreds of investors. These people believe that I've been badly treated.
But this is your side.
It's not my side, rather it's the side of the complainant. The prosecutor's office hasn't appealed. After that, in accordance with Russian law, the sentence will come into force.
And what are the requirements of the investors who have filed the appeal?
They're basically not happy with the payments. They believe that the court hasn't satisfied their claims. According to the court, their claims has been considerably exaggerated. Exaggerated claims mean another hearing.
Does this appeal mean the claim is against you or the state?
Those are the claims against the court's decision. They're demanding it is overturned.
Against the court?
Yes, against the court's decision. They want it to be overturned. If it is so, there will be another court involved in a new investigation, and I may have to go back to prison again.
So they require the continuation of the investigation to your case, which means that you may theoretically go back to prison.
The majority of them are demanding a new court hearing, and this constitutional court may overturn the decision by the Chertanovsky court.
As far as I understand, the investors being referred to as the ones deceived by you were on your side. When you were going to prison, they all walked around with posters saying, "Let Mavrodi out and he'll return our money." They believed in you, and now they may be the ones putting you back in prison. Is that right?
You see,
it's a paradox.
There were 10 million investors altogether. Of course, they were all different. Some were for me and some were against me. You can't say that they all were against me, as the story is often presented. They all believe they've been deceived, but you can't say that all of them have.
And what's the majority's opinion?
It's difficult to say. There are those who have lost and those who have won.
I see.
Those who have won are happy and they keep quiet, and those who have lost, they show their protest and outrage, and that's why they're more noticeable.
What are you going to do now? It's been just a little while since your release. Apart from your short-term engineering work, as your profession, you've been busy with your enterprise activities. Are you going to continue with this?
I really don't want to make any plans under such uncertain circumstances until the 11th of July. I may end up in prison again.
Until the court hearing takes place.
Yes, you see, it's difficult to make any plans in this situation. You could spend all of this time making different plans and then find it very difficult psychologically to cope on the 11th of July.
Will you continue with your business for now?
For now, I'm waiting for the 11th of July. In future, as I've stated many times before, I'm going to deal with the investors' payments, with the search for assets, and so on.
And now let's take a look at the history of the financial pyramid known as MMM. Natalia Khokhlova reports.
MMM, a familiar acronym for many Russians and probably the largest fraud case Russia has ever seen. At the end of the 1990s, the Russians had no experience with joint stock companies, and a few understood how they worked. At that very time, Sergei Mavrodi and his partners established MMM. Manipulating people's ignorance and their desire to get rich quick, he founded a company which in fact was a huge financial pyramid. After a massive advertising campaign on a national TV, the Russians started to buy MMM shares. Millions of people got involved with the network, with many investing everything they had. Mavrodi was even elected to the Russian State Duma and received political immunity from prosecution, but just a year later he was stripped of his status. When the Russian tax service eventually decided to take a closer look at MMM's activities, Mavrodi dropped the share price 100 times over and stopped paying dividends. The financial pyramid collapsed. Mavrodi claimed that he had been persecuted by the authorities, and thousands of cheated shareholders took to the streets demanding the government leave MMM alone. In 1994, Mavrodi was charged of concealing of taxes and taken into custody, but soon after he was released due to the help of MMM supporters. For nearly a decade, Mavrodi hid from the Russian prosecution service. He was arrested only in 2003 and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison with a $400 fine. He was also ordered to pay back 20 million rubles to shareholders. Recently, Sergei Mavrodi was released from prison, but even now many of the shareholders believe he isn't guilty, including Mavrodi himself.
We've just seen a brief report on your rise and fall, and now let's perhaps go back in time for, how much was it, about 20 years, right?
13.
And let's go back to the beginning of the MMM enterprise.
Do you mean the shares issue?
I mean in general. As far as I remember, there were 3 of you involved, you, your brother, and his fiancée.
No, it's a total misunderstanding. It wasn't my brother's fiancée, it was a third person. The thing is that...
Why 3 M's then?
Well...
2 M's for Mavrodi.
Well, you see, the first organization then was a cooperative enterprise. It required at least 3 people to organize it. I was unable to do it on my own. I basically needed 2 other people as a formality. The third person's name just so happened to start with an M. It wasn't my brother's wife. She wasn't even around then. That's how the MMM name came into being.
Did it start during the Soviet times?
No, as soon as the cooperative enterprises were allowed, I think in 1990 or 1991. That's how MMM started. At first we were dealing with computers just like the others, then with the shares, then the MMM investment fund was created. By the way, it's the biggest one in Russia at the moment. It still exists. There are 10 million investors as well. On the 1st February 1994 the shares were issued.
That's when MMM started, actually.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the cooperative business for now. You actually started just like any other businessman in this country.
Of course.
And Berezovsky and Abramovich, then all started by selling office equipment, computers and so on.
Yes, however, there is one significant point. First of all, I've never had any contact with the authorities. As far as I know, all the above-mentioned people owe their success to them. I can't state anything for sure because I don't know the exact details, but I believe that they all became connected with the authorities in one way or another. How could someone be connected with the authorities if they weren't in the area of business? It's quite clear. They probably had some contact with officials. I'm not going to condemn anyone, but it's quite clear on what basis it was happening. The most likely version is on a financial basis.
And you just were in an open field, just building your own business.
I've never had any contact with any officials.
Why then did you start such a profitable business at the time? Selling office equipment yielded quite high profits. When computers were being imported from Korea, their value was up to 1,000%, but you left this for investment and finance activities.
You see, everything changes very quickly, and at the time our country was changing by the minute. Every new day was different to the day before. Everything was breaking down. This was the transition from communism to market economy. So the computer business was profitable for a relatively short time. I was only dealing with what was profitable at that time. I was dealing with computers when they were profitable. When they stopped being profitable, I started to work in a different direction. That's it.
Do you mean that profits declined from 1,000% to 20% and that's it? That wasn't interesting anymore?
Yes, more profitable activities came up.
All right. Before we consider the MMM enterprise in more detail, let's discuss something else. You trained as a mathematical engineer, is that right? During the Soviet times, that job was quite prestigious. Why did you suddenly turn into business then? You must be one of those people who is willing to leave everything behind, all that you know, for something that you don't completely know nothing about. Why did it happen? Why?
You know,
were you thirsty for quick money?
first of all, it was the wind of change at that time, so to speak. You see, after 50-something years under the Soviet regime, suddenly there were opportunities to reveal yourself. Generally speaking, many people look back on those times with nostalgia, but I should be straightforward. During that time I was in prison and had a lot of problems, and I was quite a well-off person with a normal life. But nevertheless, I don't miss those times at all. I didn't like those times. I felt absolutely hopeless, you know.
You mean the Soviet times?
Yes, during the Soviet times. So, as soon as there was a chance to go out on my own, I embraced the change.
Says Sergei Mavrodi, the founder of the MMM financial pyramid, who has recently been released from a detention center in Moscow. Spotlight will be back shortly after a break, so don't go away.
Russia Today.
Roman Talkman, Russia Today.
Karina Millikan, Russia Today.
Alexei Roshevsky, Russia Today.
Yulia Popova, Russia Today.
They are in the very thick of things.
The time of compromise is over. Thousands have gathered here.
This is the biggest peace protest.
Showing you the world through their eyes.
This time, though, the enemy is each other.
The landing will go as smooth as the takeoff.
We'll know more in history.
Discovering what's new in Russia.
This is the gateway to the future. They want to get out and talk to people on the streets. It's just too little, too late.
Searching everywhere in detail. Russia Today, Washington,
Chernobyl, Berlin, London, Sochi,
Moscow. To give you the most up-to-date information.
and as soon as possible.
At night I often dream of mountaineering, of conquering cliffs. It's my second life.
Your coach can easily yell at you or say you're a star, like any other normal person.
Yes, we're the champions of Russia.
They're just the same as anyone else in sport, even though they have physical disabilities. They tell us their stories about how they looked adversity in the eye and won. In the documentary about disabled sports on Russia Today.
IMA Joe. Uncompromising, hard-hitting, controversial. A unique perspective on Russia from the inside. Peter Lavell's In My Humble Opinion. Every Sunday on Russia Today. Some of them come to Sochi for a holiday. Others have been living in this area for over a century. This is a small, sleepy Estonian village hidden deep in the Caucasian mountains. Whether farming or practicing their crafts, these people keep their own traditions. Find out more about Estonians in the Caucasus in the Peoples of Russia documentary series on Russia Today.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Al Gurnov, and just a reminder that our guest today is Sergei Mavrodi, the founder of a financial pyramid who has recently been released from a detention center in Moscow.
Mr. Mavrodi, you were a mathematician during the Soviet period and you had a hard time. Then business was made legal and you got involved in it by selling computers. And we stopped at the moment when you decided to create the MMM enterprise. Let me ask you a question. Had you initially planned it to become a doomed financial pyramid, so to say, for default and bankruptcy, sooner or later?
This is nonsense. Everyone calls it a financial pyramid, but nobody knows what it is. There is no such concept.
What do you mean?
Give me an example.
They're used everywhere.
They don't exist anywhere. There are no laws for it.
But they exist in reality.
Well, they're used in conversations, but their meaning is decoded in some way. Or ask any expert. They won't be able to give you a clear answer. There is no such concept.
Let me explain what I mean by the concept of a financial pyramid. The investor's money is taken at a high rate of interest. The number of investors grows, the payment to the previous investors is paid back using new money and new income, and as it expands, at some point the money for payments runs out.
Well, any bank or financial structure could match such a definition.
But bank deals with loans and different types of financial activities. They take money with one interest rate and lend it with a different one. They make money on the financial markets.
Imagine that the bank has only two investors. They both arrive on the same day. The bank pays the interest rate, and then one of them wants their money back.
No, if investors take everything away, bank collapses.
Yes, but why could it collapse if it deals with investments and financial activities, as you call them? The pyramid elements, as they call them, exist in any financial structure to some extent. They are initially built into it. But talking about me specifically, they keep blaming me for this pyramid. But what pyramid can talk about that? What kind of pyramid can you talk when investments are being made in real assets?
Well, no, it's rather more philosophical concept. US dollar is considered to be a financial pyramid, by the way.
Why do you think that real assets are not secured?
All right. When you initially created this MMM investment and finance company, you didn't mean it to be a fraud. You didn't have the scheme in your head on how to collect the money and then...
Of course I didn't. Please note another point which has been neglected the whole time. The complainants showed up only after the state has interfered. Until this happened, there were no complainants. Everything was going perfectly well. So the statement about the financial pyramid was invented by the state, even though it hadn't broken any laws at all. It was a private company which worked. It wasn't breaking the law. And then the authorities suddenly interfered in spite of their own laws.
And what they were afraid of, was it you being too wealthy?
In that situation, I became too wealthy and I became too big. A really large structure cannot coexist with the government. There shouldn't be a situation when someone can call for a referendum or remove the government altogether.
So those papers carrying your picture, which were shown on TV, were turned into another currency in the country, is that right?
Practically, yes.
And you became a parallel state bank.
That's what essentially happened. Our points were in every corner, and that's what really happened. And you could have come there. Many don't remember how MMM worked. They all believe that I took the money and didn't give it to anyone back. This is complete nonsense.
You have returned the money to some, but not to everyone. But you were going to return it, is that right? I don't remember everything, but millions of people were buying your papers, and your debt was growing geometrically.
No.
How were you going to earn the money to pay it back? You were not dealing with oil or gas.
What do you mean I wasn't? Both oil and gas, I still own 8% of Gazprom's shares. Gazprom shares, mind you. And there are lots of other oil companies as well. If you consider me from the point of view of that pyramid, this is the answer to all of your questions. All the questions. What do you mean I wasn't investing? I was in oil and gas.
So you insist that you had a certain scheme which would allow you to pay back the investors?
In essence, that's how things are now. It's all recorded in the details of the case, including 8% of Gazprom's shares and other facts. I'm not making it all up now in order to rehabilitate myself.
I heard one interview on your release where you were planning to pay back the rest of the investors. Is that true? Is there still a real scheme in place for you to pay them back?
I want to explain the situation. The court hearing took place. I've been in prison for my term. If the Constitutional Court doesn't overturn the decision of the Chertanovsky court, then that's it.
Then why in the world pay the money back?
That's it. I've already said that the state has no more claims against me. I'm not obliged to give anything back. I might just own all of their assets. Nevertheless, I'm saying that I feel a moral obligation to the investors, and I will deal with the payments. I'm still condemned in relation to fraud and evil scheming. You see, the situation is just absurd.
Okay, in case everything goes well with the court hearing, you will have to go back to your business in order to pay the money back. Or do you have the money hidden somewhere, perhaps?
It's not hidden, it's in the business. You see, the situation is absurd also because all of this information is included in my case. Those Gazprom shares are registered with certain people. All I have to do is take the money and pay it.
Will they give that money back?
There are contracts with them, and they have to be dealt with. I'm not trying to make it better. I'm sincere when I say that it was a long time ago. There are such factors as human greed and integrity. There will be problems with some people, but it's quite obvious that there are hundreds of these people. Some will give, some won't.
So you don't see yourself as a fraudster. You believe you're a businessman who became a victim of circumstances.
Not of circumstances, but rather the state which destroyed everything. Again, it's all in the details of the case. There are direct reports from local administration officials to President Yeltsin on how work was ongoing to destroy MMM. There was an advanced government session. The deputy Mitrofanov, a public figure, could verify this for you. At that meeting, all of the ministers, including even the defense minister, Mr. Grachev, were a force which spoke negatively of MMM. You know, it's like a criminal gang. When they kill someone, every one of them has to stick the knife in. The state deliberately destroy the structure. However, if someone today says that Sberbank is fraudulent, they would be gone the next day.
Well, please tell me, if to make a structure like that today in Russia, would it actually work?
Of course it would. And not only in Russia, but in any country.
So you mean that people don't change and keep making the same mistakes?
Mistakes have nothing to do with it. If you give the money for free, who isn't going to take it?
Well, no one gives money for free in other countries like France or Germany or Andorra.
I don't really want to discuss it, even though I could say a few things about France or Andorra.
Don't their laws provide for this?
They provide for everything, and it's as easy as it is here.
Why? You said that you never been abroad. Why don't you go to, say, state of Belgium, for example, and start a similar scheme there?
I have to wait for the Constitutional Court hearing first, and then I might think about Belgium.
But have you thought about it?
Let me assure you that in Belgium it would be even easier than here. Here the people are illiterate, and it's difficult to explain to them, and people there understand things.
So, according to what you're saying, it looks like the people are illiterate here, and it is the businessmen who are illiterate there, and you're the only person who knows how to make big money. What is it? Is it they're lazy, or why don't they do it?
I know how to do it, but I don't know why they don't do it.
And what is your secret? Why did millions of people bring their money to you? Did you have a successful actors in your ads?
Seriously speaking, I believe that any large business should be done only on your own. And everything depends on your personality. I sincerely think so. The answer to why people brought the money, as this I was able to do it, there is no other answer. If there was a recipe for success, everyone would do it, but they don't, even though many want to.
What exactly were you able to do?
You create such a structure.
Okay, it's easy to create something, just collect the documents and file them.
Not at all.
So what was the most difficult? Was it to persuade people to agree with the authorities to find money? What?
Everything was difficult.
Okay, for example, when I see the guys at the market play the cups, their main secret is to move the ball from one cup to another. So that is it.
Well, it's fraud.
Yeah, well, I know, but their secret is to know how to win. So what is your main secret? You say that you are unique. Is that so?
I think it's a combination of qualities, really. I'm trying to answer sincerely to you. That's why I just don't give a simple answer. I think about your questions, and then I give you an honest answer. It must be a combination of qualities. If you follow the development of any successful enterprise, you'll see, there is one successful person in charge, as a rule.
Does that really mean spending 5 years in prison?
You see, there are other options. What's 5 years? It just happened that way. The authorities were really treading a fine line. In 1994, when I was already in prison, I knew that 100,000 people gathered outside the building on Petrovka Street, yelling my name so loud that the walls were shaking. I knew that when Lomans would come tomorrow, I could start a civil war, just order them to attack the Kremlin.
You're saying you were able to start a civil war in the country?
Of course.
And how many people would follow you?
Imagine that 10 million investors had family members. Do you remember what was going on in Moscow at the time?
Do you think that about 30 million people would take to the streets for you?
Of course not. But even a percentage of that number would be a large amount. Do you remember? Did you see the reports?
So you could have brought hundreds of thousands of people onto the streets, and why didn't you do it then?
I didn't want to.
Weren't you brave enough?
You can't talk about being brave here.
But you're a businessman, which means you're a player.
It would mean blood being spilled. I didn't want freedom at that price, it's true. I decided that it would be too high a price. There's a lot of people who would have done it in my place, even without thinking. When the authorities started the whole thing, they had no idea that they were playing with fire, but I decided not to do it.
And do authorities today realize that you have saved them from a civil war?
I don't think so. As you know, if I start paying back, there will be more problems. They say now that I'm a fraudster because I haven't paid the money back. And if I do pay out, I will become too powerful a political figure again, and the problems may start once again.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us, and just a reminder that our guest today was Sergei Mavrodi, the founder of the MMM financial pyramid, who has recently been released from a detention center in Moscow after serving 4.5 years. And that's it for today from all of us here.